All right, welcome to this episode. As you can see, we first started with our basic clouds, turned those cartoony clouds and dashes into something a little bit more realistic. Then we moved on to our mountains, taking those perfect pyramids, plain brown, adding some shadows, some textures. Then we added our reflection. We added some water down here. So as you can see, we're working for the furthest thing back and moving forward. The next thing we're going to start using is we're going to start making some beautiful trees, some plant life, almost to shape it out and kind of encompass this painting a little bit more. We're using basic colors, okay? So I want you to have your blacks, your white, we can get yellows, we can get greens, we can get reds, any kind of those colors. Even if you want a blue, you can throw some blue in there too. So get your primary colors plus your green and black and white. Get a medium-sized brush, a small-sized brush, and maybe a brush that you feel comfortable making fine lines with. Let's get started. We're gonna make some awesome little trees. Let's do it. We're gonna make maybe a darker island or something a little bit closer so we can make some trees on it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and make some of that brown, yellow into red and a little bit of black. I'm making a kind of a darker version right now, just so I can add maybe a nice little silhouette of a land right here. So I'm gonna make some land right here. And it's almost like a basic little hill top, maybe something just coming over the water. What it does, it kind of like encompasses that corner there. It makes it look a little bit more interesting, like a corner is obviously starting to happen. You can even take some of this, paint that you're using and still use it on some of your mountains. It just adds a little bit of a shadow, darker shadow effect if you like. But as you can see, I've got a pretty cool effect there, and why not? Hey, let's just do something over here. Make it look like a fun little piece of land. Real estate is in front of this awesome body of water right here. Essentially, we want to start with maybe more of a silhouette, I would say, kind of feel. So look at me. I'm just going to town while I'm talking to you, and adding shadows. Look at that. I can't help myself. What you got here is some basic land, and it's encompassing. So I want to add some highlights. I put it like maybe a little bit of light brown on there. And I'm just working on the little land bits and maybe adding some dabs, some dashes to make that land look a little bit less basic. And it looks like there's maybe some kind of depth to that. Not quite a silhouette, but enough to where it makes it a little bit more fun. All right, that is your basic land. All right, just following around there. Now it really depends on what kind of tree you want to put on these guys. Obviously this is not quite the beachy scene. I guess it could be in some places. I'd probably want to add more green if I want it to be like the Hawaiian Islands or some kind of paradise. This, to me, I'm kind of getting a little bit more of like we need some evergreen trees in this guy. So I'm going to take that black brown that I was using, take your small brush, and I want you to get brave, take a deep breath, and make maybe a line come right over here, right over your actual sky, into your sky, over some of those mountains there. Look at that. Oh boy. You're like, Sean, what the heck did you do to me? No, I want to do that. Just trust me on it. Trust me. Make a little line. And you know what? We can add some of that brown, that light brown kind of going up, some of it, just maybe dab up it a little bit, adding some highlights into that tree. Look at that. All right. We're going to practice with your small brush, a brush you feel comfortable making fine lines with. We're going to kind of, with our brush and I got a flat brush, but I'm using very lightly. I'm going to be adding some mostly like little tree branches coming off this guy. You can add some little gaps to it, whatever you'd like. This is just the branch part. We're going to add some greenery on it just to liven this painting up anyway. But you can see as I'm going over some of those mountains now, that's okay. That's realism right there. There are trees in front of mountains. that happens out there. But doing this, by doing this, really adds a fun effect. You can add a little bit more black into your brown to make it darker and have some cool shadow effects. Don't worry, we'll add highlights on there anyway. It's all about layering and changing some of that, just changing some of your tones and, you know, some of the colors and stuff. Look at some of these branches are just twacked out, you know, whatever. Maybe just they had a bad day. I don't know. Branches are always different on every tree. Some are sticking out a little bit crazier than the other ones. Who knows? Okay. But as you can see, hey, there's some cool trees right there. Or a tree. All right, so you got that guy. Let's add maybe a small one right here on this guy. Same thing. Okay, and then we're gonna add those little branches. I didn't add the highlights on this guy here just because I think we can add it afterwards once we're done with these dark branches. I'm also using like a very brown black on this just to add some depth. Look at this painting. It's turning into something, isn't it? Turning into something. You can also add some brushes, maybe some grass or something coming out here. I don't know, some shadows of grass at least. Look at these little dashes coming up. You can use your fan brush if you like that. I'm using just the flat brush I've been using, just to show that there's some imperfections down there. And also too, we're gonna head back over to our highlights. We're gonna add some of that light brown that we originally made. Red and yellow. Add some black, and then what did we do? Added some white. All right, I think I'm gonna add some dots and dashes on these ends here, these little rocks. Maybe some liveliness there. All right, let's do some highlights on your tree trunk and your tree branches. Maybe some highlights popping out. Don't worry if it's a little bit crazy at first. We're gonna add some more layers and change it dramatically. Oh yeah, that's all random. Whatevs. Okay. You got that. All right, you got the silhouette of your trees there. Let's add a little bit more life onto those trees. All right, let's add a little bit more life. We're gonna wipe off that brush or get a new one. And we're gonna go ahead and add maybe some plain green on here. Now we gotta test the green that you have. Sometimes that green is just way too bright, sometimes it's not. Test it out first. The one I got is pretty green, so I'm gonna add a little bit of brown into that green and kind of dull it up a little bit. Yeah, you can see it's like so bright. I'm like, I don't want it that bright. It's all about testing your colors and getting a feel for the paints that you're using. But again, I'm using just the real basic acrylic paints here. There are some acrylic paints out there that are really, really nice. Got a lot of pigment to them, almost as thick as toothpaste on some of them. All right, you can see we're just adding a little bit of green to some of these. Just a little bit of life. I'm going to do the same thing over here, add some life to this tree here. You don't need to add a ton because it does add like a silhouette effect when you're doing this. But it's still a fun step. And you can even almost dab or blot some of that paint just to add that realism. Like there's some kind of evergreen needles coming out of these things. Okay. It did cover some of the mountains, so if you made a mistake on one part of the mountains, you can just cover it with a little bit of tree. How fun, huh? That's what I love about acrylic paint. So user-friendly. Now if you want more darker shadows, add a little bit more black-brown onto there, and that will add the illusion a little bit more shadowing. Just gives it a nice effect. You can see some of that water poking through the bottom there. Now if you want really dark shadows, add just plain black. Check this out. I'm gonna add some just plain black on here. I like that contrast. For me, I just love having contrast. But again, I'm just adding and going back and forth and having some fun with it. So we took our basic clouds, we turned those into a little bit more realistic clouds. All right, we ended up going to our mountains after that and adding a little bit more depth and learning texture. And then what we did was we went on to water reflection, and then we started adding a little bit more life, some trees, and just really added a fun element to this painting here. So hopefully, again, we wanted to take your basic stuff and turn it into something a little bit special and take your time on it. That's why we did a lot of different episodes on this one painting here, so you can take your time and just enjoy the process. So thank you guys. We'll see you on the next one.